Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on the Music Den. I am your host, Armando Venditti, and in this episode, we are going to be ranking the albums of the band Queen. Now, for me, Queen have always been a favorite band of mine since about the age of 11. I've known of them since about the age of 5. So, I go back a long way with this group. I have every album in duplicate, sometimes even triplicate, but we won't go into that now. Just a bit about the band. They formed, and the roots go back to as far back as 1969, where Roger Taylor and Brian May met up in college after Brian May posted on a bulletin board a notice that saying, guitarist looking for, what was the phrase? A Mitch Mitchell, Ginger Baker type drummer. So they met, and along with a school friend by the name of Tim Staffel, they formed a band by the name of Smile. And Smile were basically, according to Brian May, a semi-pro outfit. They never really got anywhere in terms of any type of recognition. They had one single that was released in the US under the Mercury label called Step on Me. And I believe the flip side was called Earth. So after that flopped, they basically retreated to lick their wounds and to figure out what they were going to do next. Along the way, they met this guy by the name of Freddie Bulsara, who was a friend of Tim Staffel's, and he was basically always encouraging them to continue, but he wanted to be the lead singer. And Brian May and Roger Taylor were not really convinced that he had what it took. Well, after a lot of convincing and cajoling, they decided to form a band with Freddie. He was going by the name of Freddie Bulsara at this point. He hadn't changed his name to Mercury yet. They formed the band, and they got together, and Freddie came up with the name of Queen. And I believe the original name was they were going to go under was the Rich Kids. So personally, I think Queen works a lot better, but that's just me. Their first performance as Queen was in 1970, and this was before they met John Deacon. They went through about, as legend has it, they went through about 7 bass players, but I believe it was about 3 or 4, and it wasn't working out. So they needed to find a person that was the right fit. And they met up with a guy by the name of John Deacon. And in February of 1971, that is considered the official birth or birth of that formation of Queen, of those 4 members. This was the group of 4 members that they felt was going to go further than any incarnation that they had before with the other 3 or 4 other bass players. So they started doing gigs, and eventually they landed an opportunity where there was a new studio opening up called Delane Lee, and they wanted someone to go in there, a group to go in there and start testing out the new equipment. And the deal was if they went in and helped them test their new equipment, they would get demos out of the deal done professionally for them. So they rightfully jumped at the chance. And eventually they signed with through the urging of one Roy Thomas Baker, who went by Roy Baker at the time, who convinced his bosses, Barry and Norman Sheffield, to sign them to a management deal. They signed a deal with Trident Audio Productions. And around 1971, they started to record what would become their debut album. So and the rest, as they say, is history. Now what I'm going to do here is, it's going to be a bit of a lengthier video, and I apologize for that, but I'm going to attempt to rank my albums, my favorite albums from Queen from 15 to number 1. So to start off, we're going to start with the album that came out in May of 1982, Hot Space. Now this album, oh, what a hot mess. This album is it's basically a polarizing album. People either love it or they just can't stand it. I got this album after listening to the original Greatest Hits. It was released in October of 81. And that's how I fell in love with Queen myself. I listened to the Greatest Hits and I fell head over heels for this group. Every song on the Greatest Hits I loved. And even Under Pressure, which was released as the last track on side 1 on the North American release of the Greatest Hits album. Hot Space I purchased, or was purchased for me for my birthday in 1982. It was again released May of 82, and it was a definite departure. It was disco, it was synth pop, it was funk, it was programmed drums, programmed bass synths. Everything was programmed. It didn't, I'm going to put this diplomatically, it alienated a lot of the Queen fan base, the staunch supporters of Queen. It went gold on the strength of it being a Queen album alone. But I think once people bought it and listened to it, they realized basically what the hell is this? The album, I mean, as a kid, I used to listen to side 1, which contained Staying Power, Dancer, Back Chat, Body Language, and Action This Day, which at the time was okay. Side 2, you had Put Out the Fire, Life is Real, Calling All Girls, Las Parabolas de Amor, and Cool Cat, and Under Pressure was tacked on to the end of Hot Space on side 2, I think to make it more marketable, because at that point, that's what this album needed. Even when I listened to it after listening to the Greatest Hits, looking back on it now, I realized that it was not what people were going to be used to hearing from the Queen. So for that reason alone, it just didn't, and I listened to it a few weeks ago for another reason, and it hasn't aged well for me. So that's number 15. Number 14 is Made in Heaven. The one album that was released posthumously after Freddie Mercury's death from AIDS. It was released in November of 95. And I remember when this came out, I was so excited to have a new Queen album. Like, wonderful, right? Great. Listening to it, a lot of ballads, a lot of very mid-tempo pieces of music, a lot of slow arrangements. Songs like It's a Beautiful Day, which is great. Mother Love, which I think is a masterpiece. One of the other new songs was called You Don't Fool Me, which is on side 2. It's okay. I call it dance rock because it has a really good bounce to it. It's all right. The album ends with It's a Beautiful Day reprise, which starts off as starts off as track the same as track 1, the slow build intro, and then it goes into heavy, like sort of building guitars and building bass synth, and then the drums kick in, and it just takes off like a bat out of hell in terms of the tempo, which I loved and I still love. Subsequently, I found out that there were only 3 tracks recorded 4 made in heaven that were brand new. The rest was all stuff that was recorded before, either by Freddie Mercury solo or Roger Taylor. There was one track, the ballad Heaven for Everyone, which was recorded for his album With the Cross, which Shove It from 1988. And the rest of the stuff was all either B-sides or, again, stuff that Freddie Mercury recorded for his solo albums. So for me, I just think that if they had released the 3 tracks, new tracks, as like an EP, or maybe try and unearth some other tracks that were never heard before. Oh, one quick correction. The track It's a Beautiful Day was recorded by Freddie Mercury as just like a studio outtake in 1980. And they worked on it and just fixed it up and made it a full-fledged song. So has it stood the test of time? Yeah, yes and no. It's a good album. I mean, it went platinum in the US, multi-platinum in the UK, obviously, but it really hasn't. I haven't touched it in years, like literally years. So that's number 14. Number 13 is A Kind of Magic. Now, Kind of Magic was released in 1986, and I believe it was May of 86, and it features the songs, the title track, A Kind of Magic, Princess of the Universe, Who Wants to Live Forever. It was basically 9 of the songs were featured in the, I believe it was 8 or 9 songs that were featured in the Highlander soundtrack. There is a different version to the Highlander soundtrack that features these songs, but on that version of the soundtrack, they're recorded differently. A Kind of Magic is done. The title track is done in a 6/8 time, and it features more heavy guitar, just more heavy arrangement. Who Wants to Live Forever is featured as the same, but Freddie Mercury does the vocal on both verses instead of Brian May doing the intro verse. I just think that for this album, if they hadn't released it in that form as the Highlander soundtrack, I think it would have done better in the US. I think the US at that time, it would reach number 56. At this point, Capitol really wasn't doing what they should have been doing to promote the album, or to promote the band, period. But what do I know, right? As a fan. That's number 13. Number 12, The Miracle. Released May of 1989. There was a 3-year gap between A Kind of Magic and The Miracle. And this is the first album, the last album for Capitol, but the first album to have every song credited to the collective of Queen, as opposed to individual members of the band. And they agreed at this point that it was Freddie Mercury who came up with the idea that whoever came up with the idea for a song, it would be credited to the collective, to the group. And, they kicked themselves for not doing it prior to this. The music on it, I would describe it as a cross between the funk of Hot Space and The Game, because there are 10 tracks on there. You have songs of an R&B funk nature, like Party, mixed with Party segues into another track called Khashoggi Ship. There are 2 parts. And does it always work? Yes and no. My favorites are Party I Want It All, The Invisible Man, Breakthrough, Scandal, and Was It All Worth It? Um, I think Was It All Worth It as an ender to the album? Perfect. Perfect. A beautiful track, very a heavy rock track, but also very poignant at the same time. So yeah, I mean they were heading in the right direction with this album. But I think it only hit number 4, it maxed at number 49 on the Billboard charts. So they were almost there, but not quite. Number 11 is The Works. From 1984. This album was their first album for Capitol. Capitol at the time were really excited to have Queen on their roster. They had jumped ship from Elektra, and they were excited that a record company in America was actually excited to have them on their list of recording artists. So the album, features, of course, Radio Gaga, I Want to Break Free, Hammer to Fall, It's a Hard Life. It's a good album. I think that side one is strong. I think that had they replaced, there was one track on side one at the end called Man on the Prowl. I think that if they had replaced that track with the B side to Radio Gaga called I Go Crazy, side one would have been killer, no filler. Side two starts with Machines Are Back to Humans, which to me anchors that album. I think it saves it. It's a conversation about whether or not our machine's going to take over the world, and if they do, are we going to be able to take it? Are we going to survive and last? And the end of the track leaves it very ambiguous. The lyric says, living in a new world, how are you going to last? Machine world, it's a machine's world. And then it fades out. So you never know what is going to be happening, like what happens at the end of the song, whether they survive or not. Keep Passing the Open Windows, which is the third track on side two. It's okay. It was written for the soundtrack of Hotel New Hampshire. They subsequently didn't end up writing the music for the soundtrack, but they kept that track for the album. Hammer to Fall is just balls to the wall rock from Brian May, bordering on heavy metal, just really heavy guitars and treated drums, whatever you want to call it, but it's still heavy. Is This the World We Created, which is the ballad on the end? It's a good ending for the album, very, very poignant. They needed a ballad for the album, and Freddie and Mercury and Brian May were in the studio one night, and that's what they came up with. So it's good. It's good. But I think at this point, after the debacle of Hot Space, again, there were, just to mention, there were 2 years between Hot Space and The Works. So after the debacle of Hot Space, they, I think they were trying to catch up to what was going on at the time musically. So if it works, you can leave that up to interpretation, up to opinion. The number 10, is The Game. Released June of 1980. A massive hit for the band. Like, unbelievable. It was the first single that was released from the album was that was released prior to the album was Crazy Little Thing Called Love, which was released in 1979. and that was a massive hit. At that point, the band were still working on the album, and they realized that when the song went number one in America, that they had to really hurry up and finish working on the album. But they got into this routine of working a little, playing a lot, and not a lot of work got done. The album starts off with Play the Game, which has a nice ascending synth line that comes in using an Oberheim synthesizer for the first time on one of their albums. It's a good album opener. Goes into Dragon Attack, which some people call it rock, some people call it funk. I call it a combination of both, because you cannot deny that bass line that John Deacon puts down. And near the end of the track, or almost midway, Brian May comes in with his guitar solos, and just the build up of guitar solos and guitar runs, that it's just like, it's mayhem, right? And just when you think that everything is going to explode, the track sort of like just peters out, and the guitars peter out, sorry. And all that's left are, the drums and that bass line, that simple, not simple, but that recurring bass line. And there's also a timpani section, overdub, that's put in, not timpani, but a drum solo section that was put in by Roger Taylor. So it's funky as hell. Another one, Best of Dust, 3 million seller as a single. What else can be said about it, except that it was basically stolen from Good Times by Chic? I digress. I Need Your Love, Need Your Lovin' Tonight. First time I believe that two songs from John Deacon were put on an album back to back. Just a good, fun, catchy little rock tune. Good guitar solo. And 2 minutes 45 seconds. Nothing overly done. And side one ends with Crazy Little Thing Called Love. And I've said about that, a good rockabilly song. The first time that Brian May uses a Telecaster on a guitar solo, he didn't use his Red Special. Side two opens with Rocket Prime Jive, which some people hate. I love it. You have Freddie on the intro verse with a slow guitar intro, and then it just busts into the song and it goes ballistic. And I've said before, the guitar solo sounds like, Brian May kind of is like losing control of the guitar, and then he gains control of the guitar, and he just goes into a solo that's really, really catchy, really great. Don't Try Suicide. Yeah. Good song at the time when I first heard it. I liked it. It was catchy, but has only stood the test of time. Sail Away, Sweet Sister, that comes after it. Beautiful song, very poignant. I like that Brian May. Some people don't like Brian May's vocals. I love Brian May's vocals. I think the song is dedicated to the sister I never had. Okay, take from that whatever you will, but it's a good mid-tempo rocker. Great song. Coming Soon, which comes after Sail Away, Sweet Sister, is just a good balls out rock track from Roger Taylor. Good guitar solo, just very bouncy, very, very lively, just a feel good song. And Save Me, which ends the game, it was a hit. It was a minor hit in Europe for the band. It wasn't ever released as a single here. And it's basically someone that's pining after a lost relationship, whether it be girlfriend, boyfriend, what have you. But it was a good way. It's a good ballad, a beautiful guitar solo that how can I put this? That combines acoustic and electric guitar, kind of like intertwining it together, right? Interweaving it together. So yeah, that's number 10. Number 9, Flash Gordon soundtrack. Now, bear in mind that they were working on this, came out November of 1980. And they were working on 2 albums at the same time, being the game and the Flash Gordon soundtrack. Um, very bombastic, very over the top. I love it myself. I I've always listened to this album as a whole. I remember picking up my copy as a on vinyl for like $1.99. It was, the album cover had the hole punch in it, meaning it was discontinued by Elektra. My brother-in-law took me out one afternoon, and I found it and I bought it, and I'm not regretting it at all. I love it. I think it's fantastic. It was the first time that a rock band were used for a movie soundtrack, but they were given carte blanche to do whatever they want as long as it suited the movie. And it did. I mean, yes, you have 2 songs that have vocals, Flash Gordon, Flash's theme, and the hero. And the rest of the album, there are 18 tracks, 2 with vocals, 16 incidental pieces of music. But pieces of music like football theme, Crash Diamond City with Flash approaching, beautiful. Arborea, The Planet of Tree Men, which was a John Deacon, which is just a beautiful atmospheric piece with just guitar. The Kiss, Aurora Resurrects Flash, which ends side 1. I think it's great. The Battle theme, which was a Brian May composition, and that just kicks ass all over the place. Beautiful. I mean, there's not much more that can be said, really. And people were criticizing that it was released as an official Queen album. I think it reached number 10 in the UK charts. But I mean, I loved it as an album. I think it was great. Number 8, we come to Jazz. Released November of 78 with the iconic nude women on the bicycle fold-out poster that was included in the album. This album was recorded in France, in a village, I believe, called Super Bear, with Roy Thomas Baker. He was back in the fold for this album, with songs like, Mustafa, which kicks off the album. Freddie Mercury coming in with that killer intro on the vocal. His vocal ability, he could cut through anything. He could cut through the most layered guitar section that Brian May could ever create, and his vocal came through clean and clear and crisp and beautiful. A very heavy track. Fat-Bound Girls as a single, backed with Bicycle Race. Great song. Sorry, let's just take a sip of coffee here, guys. Perfect. One does need one's coffee when doing something like this. Again, I was saying, Fat-Bound Girls backed with Bicycle Race. Fantastic track. Very heavy drums, good chorus. Jealousy, which comes after Fat-Bound Girls, is just a really beautiful ballad that Freddie Mercury wrote. I think it was released as a single, and it was good. It was good. Bicycle Race, that comes after Jealousy. Again, what can be said? It was Um, fantastic jigsaw puzzle of a track to put together on record. They said that to play it live was just fun to play it live because people got into it really, really heavily. Um, and it's just a fun track. It was just different to use, the bicycle bells in the one section, and then to go into the guitar solo where you've got basically dueling guitar lines fighting with one another. I think it was great, just great. If you can't beat them, a John Deacon track, it's all right, middle of the road. Um, you could never really call John Deacon's tracks, with regards to his contributions to Queen, very heavy. I don't think. Um, but I mean, take it or leave it. Um, the last track on side one, "Let Me Entertain You," a fantastic track. Freddie Mercury composition. Um, heavy bass that comes in with the piano, and then you know, I guess you call it like a bass fill that John Deacon does, and then the piano, with the piano, and then the guitars come in, and then it you know kicks into the song. Just a very fantastic, um, intricate piece of songwriting. And even the lines that Freddie would write. I'll pull you, I'll pill you, I'll quella devil you. And to throw you, I'll use any device. So I mean, who in the hell uses Cruella de Vil in a song, as a reference in a song? So I mean, it's great. It's just great. And live, doing it live, amazing. Side two kicks off with Dead on Time, which really good rocker, good chugging guitar rhythm going with it, and just great. Great harmony guitar work, great guitar solo. And then to have at the very end, the thunderclap, from a rainstorm that was going on outside the studio one day. And then to end the song. I mean, that's fantastic, you know. In only 7 days, beautiful ballad, just very straightforward, really nothing over the top about it, but a really good song, a very poignant song also. Dreamer's Ball is just very relaxed, very sort of laid back, slinky ragtime jazz. That they you could tell. I mean, you could tell that they were having fun doing it. Although there was a rumor that Roger Taylor didn't want to record it, and they almost got into a fist fight in the studio about it. But he relented, and the rule was in the band, the unwritten law was, however, whoever wrote the song got the final say as to how the arrangement of the track was going to be. So there you go. Moving into Fun It. I never thought I'd say this, but I never expected Roger Taylor to do a disco track. Very bass heavy in terms of the bass drums, not so much the bass guitar, but very rhythmic in terms of the guitar line. Um, and just a very good dance track, a la 1978, And I like the fact that Freddie and Mercury and Roger Taylor did the dual vocal lines, and then they sang together on the end, going like into the chorus. So it's just a great track. Leaving Home Ain't Easy, a beautiful song from Brian May about leaving a situation that you're not happy in and just making a break from the past and just moving forward. I think a lot of us have had to do that in our lives, and for good, or for the betterment of the individual, whether they wanted to do it or not. So I think it's just a great track. And to have Brian May sing the middle section where he's saying, "Stay, my love, please stay, don't stray. What's wrong, my love?" So, and having them speed up his vocal slightly to make it sound like a woman singing to him, to beg him to come back home. I think it's just wonderful. Then it goes into "Don't Stop Me Now," which was the single that was released well, it was released here too. It was, I think it was the third single that was released here. It only got to 86 here in the charts in North America, but it fared better in the UK. I love the song. I think it's just great. Very hard driving drums, good tempo, good guitar solo, and how it just sort of like fades out on the end on the final code on the coda, just with Freddie Mercury just sort of doing some vocal phrasing, and it basically fades out. The final track on the album, more of that jazz and Roger Taylor composition, heavy drums, a lot of rhythm guitar, just a good solid vocal from him. The use of shakers in terms of the rhythm track, and then in the middle, almost near the end, they insert snippets of every other song on the album, and in the track, and then it fades out to go back into more of that jazz into the backing track. And then again, the drums are just relentless. They're heavy. They're just bombastic, right? I do like the album. I do think that some of the drumming on the album, some of the recording, lacks in that the drums are not as heavy as they could be. And I think that had to do with, I mean, if you listen to songs like, again, Mustafa is heavy, Fat Bottom Girls, more of that jazz is heavy. But if you listen to songs like Jealousy and If You Can't Beat 'Em, and even Let Me Entertain You, the drum tracks are very sort of soft sounding. It's the only way I can describe it. And I think that had to do with Roy Thomas Baker's production style. He had been working with the Cars at that point. He started work with the Cars. And I think he tried to use some of that production technique on this album. And sometimes at some points, I don't think it works, but that's just my opinion. And again, I do love this album, but it's my opinion. Anyways, moving on to number 7, News of the World. Released in October of 77. This was at a point in their career where they were releasing an album a year. Release an album, tour, release an album, tour, nonstop. And they did that from 73 to 82. This album, they gave themselves 2 months to write, arrange, record, release. 11 tracks, obviously known for We Will Rock You and We Are the Champions, that were back to back on the album on side 1. This, for all the diversity that's on the album, like, jazz, some ballads, this has got to be the most hard hitting album that they released up to this point. And they were recording next door to the they recorded the album at Wessex Studios, and they were recording next to the Sex Pistols. And Roger Taylor kept telling the guys, punk is the way that things are going. That's the new musical style that's going to stay, or that's got some validity to it. And he said in an interview, he says that at that point, maybe the over the top guitar vocal harmonies and the guitar orchestrations, as they call them, like multi-layering of guitars, really wasn't what was in vogue at the time in fashion. So they tried to make a straightforward album that basically was a hard rock album, and they succeeded with songs like Sure Heart Attack. That's like 3 minutes and change of just breakneck tempo drums and guitars, and just it doesn't let go. It doesn't relent until the end of the song. Um, Songs like All Dead, which Brian May wrote about his cat, of all things, that passed away when he was a kid. Spread Your Wings is a beautiful mid-tempo rock song by John Deacon about someone who wasn't happy in their situation and wanted to move on. And I gotta say, back to All Dead, the guitar solo that builds and builds and builds by Brian May is just beautiful. It's just layering upon layering of guitars, and it comes to fruition, to a climax, and it's just beautiful. In my very humble opinion. After Spread Your Wings, you have Fight from the Inside, which is Roger Taylor's second contribution to the album. This was first time that Roger Taylor and John Deacon had two songs on an album from Queen. And it's very heavy, very bass guitar, rhythm guitar oriented, heavy drums, just ass kicking. You have Roger Taylor on bass at this point. And Roger Taylor is a threat. I mean, he plays guitar, piano, bass, keyboards. He can do it all. And he was allowed to play bass and do overdubs and with the drums. And and his vocal just is such a powerhouse of a delivery that I mean, he has a gravelly voice in the first place. He always had that gravelly, low voice, but he could also hit the high notes. Like he could hit an F sharp, like it was no one's business. So that was a fantastic track. That was a good way to end the album on side one. Side two starts off with Get Down Make Love, which is Freddie at his seductive best, with guitar treatments done by Brian May. And when they would do it live, that track, it almost sounded like some people were, with the lights and stuff, with the effects and the lights and the smoke, it almost sounded like, you were in a scene from Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So that's a great song, very heavy, very driven, very, just very bombastic and just kick ass. Sleeping on the Sidewalk, written by Brian May, which was basically a blues number. Almost like, and it talks about like a Robert Johnson character who sold his soul to the devil to make it, and he never, he regretted it in the end. Who Needs You is a wonderful mid-tempo acoustic piece with some electric guitar by Brian May, which was just wonderful. You hear that, playing maracas and on the track. It's just very lighthearted. And he's basically telling the person, you screwed me around long enough. I'm out of here. Who needs you? It's Late, which follows it, is Queen bad numbers. It's perfect. And it's basically it's like a little novella. Put the music. Sorry. I mean, the opening lyrics are, "You say you love me, and I hardly know your name. And if I say I love you in the candlelight, there's no one but myself to blame." It's basically somebody telling either his wife or boyfriend or girlfriend that I can't give you what you want. I can't be faithful to you. You know, um, I'm doing the best I can, but I'm only human. And the person is basically trying to hold on to what's left of what they believe is their sanity with regards to relationships around them. Fantastic track. 6 minutes, 30 seconds of perfection. There's a There is a single version of it that was released on 7-inch by Elektra, but Brian May has vowed that will never, ever see the light of day if he has anything to say about it. Because they cut it down to something like 3 minutes and 20 seconds, which I don't know how the hell you could do that. The album ends with My Melancholy Blues. And it's just a very laid back, piano driven jazz song, lounge type of jazz song, with Roger Taylor on using the brushes for on drums. Just a very relaxed, laid back track. Beautiful, beautiful song, and it fades out on the very end. So there's no hard end, there's no hard stop. It's just a nice fade out, and it's a good album closer for the entire piece. And that's just it too. Queen looked at these albums as collectives, not just as singles to be plucked off and promoted individually. They looked at the albums as a collective, as a whole. So, yeah. Anyways, uh, number 6, A Day at the Races. Released in, I believe it was December of 76. And it was a follow-up to A Night at the Opera. And the lead-off single was Somebody to Love. Now, people have complained that A Day at the Races sounds too much like A Night at the Opera. Well, guys, that's because they were recorded around the same time. Okay? The album title is taken from a Marx Brothers movie of the same name, just as A Night at the Opera was. So, and the album cover is black with a version of the crest on the front, as opposed to the Day at the Races cover is the black one, where A Night at the Opera is the white cover with the crest that Freddie Mercury designed. So the album is a continuation of A Night at the Opera. Sorry. And it's a fantastic album. It starts off with Tie Your Mother Down, which I believe goes back to 1971 in terms of creation. You Take My Breath Away is a beautiful piano ballad with Brian May on guitar orchestrations and Freddie Mercury doing all the vocals, triple tracking himself. Long Way is, again, just a wonderful mid-tempo track that it almost sounds like Brian May is using a pedal steel guitar on the intro, but I'm not sure. It depends. I do believe that he's using the Red Special. I think that's how it depends on how he tuned it to sound, right? And Brian May wanted it released as a single. I believe it was released as a single in the US. Don't quote me on that, but Brian May wanted it released as a single. It wasn't officially released because he felt that that it had legs to carry it as a single to be popular, but Elektra didn't agree with him. Millionaire Waltz by Freddie Mercury is a tour de force in 4 minutes and 45 seconds. As the title suggests, it's in 3/4 time, and just beautiful overdubs of his vocals, like with the with the verses, and then in the middle section, it gets really heavy. The drums come in, and Freddie just comes in over the top on over the top of the guitars, and he's just white hot with his delivery, like unreal. You can hear him as clear as day doing that. And then it gets all frantic with the guitars, and then it goes back into a 3/4 time on the piano and the guitar. And it's just beautiful. Um, I wish that maybe could have been released as a single, but what do I know? I'm just a fan, right? But it's a beautiful piece of work. It's magic for me. It's wonderful. Um, You and I, written by John Deacon. Again, you can never call his songs heavy. Beautiful song, B-side to Tie Your Mother Down. Just a very enjoyable pop song. Great, great song. Side two kicks off with Somebody to Love, which was Freddie's Ode to Gospel. And it was the lead-off single. It hit number 24 in the charts, and it was considered to be Bohemian Rhapsody Jr., which I don't get. But in subsequent interviews, Freddie Mercury has said that he felt that Somebody to Love was, in his estimation, a better song from the standpoint of songwriting structure than Bohemian Rhapsody. I mean, I guess you could say that because he wrote both of them. But the choral, listen to me, the gospel arrangements in terms of the vocals on the album, on the track, are amazing. And there's no way around it. I mean, this song had hit written all over it. And I mean, I just think it's a beautiful track. White Man, which comes after Somebody to Love, was the B-side to Somebody to Love. And it's just brutal. Just brutal. Like, great guitar work from Brian May. Freddie Mercury just delivers a vocal line and a delivery that cannot be matched. Very strong, very, very heavy, very coming, grabs you by the throat and doesn't let go until he's ready to let you go. You're basically sort of stuck listening to what he's saying. And you can almost imagine that, there's at one point where he's delivering a line and it's so intense that you can just imagine his throat is bleeding by the end of the take. So yeah, that track is just amazing. And then it ends. You think it's ending, it fades out, and then Taylor comes in with like a drum hit, like on the on the floor toms, just boom, and it's just like you get startled when you hear it because you don't expect it. And then follows what follows that track? Good Old Fashioned Lover Boy, which is another Freddie Mercury track, and it's beautiful, just very light-hearted pop track. Very good intricate guitar work from Brian May, and Mike Stone is on backing vocals on this song. So very interesting to hear Mike Stone singing. And then it goes into Drowse, track from Roger Taylor. And the use of slide guitar on this is undeniable, and it fits perfectly. It's a very laid back sort of just very very laid back song, and good slide guitar, good vocal delivery by Roger Taylor on it. And the drums are sort of the way they're recorded, the way I guess the way they were mixed. they're very sort of underplayed to an extent. That's the only way I can describe it. And then the final track is Teo Toriate, Let Us Cling Together, which Brian May wrote and dedicated to their Japanese fans. And it's just a beautiful song. Beautiful song. The choruses are sung in Japanese. And on the middle section, Freddie comes in and he's just white hot with his vocal delivery. And what he's basically saying is, I may not be here with you now, but I am always with you wherever you go. Or wherever I am, I'll be thinking of you no matter what. And that's just a beautiful sentiment. And the album, first of all, the album starts with a gong and some almost like a guitar treatment that it's the guitar line from White Man, and then you hear like Brian May hits a chord, and it's very big, very bold, and then you hear a guitar line that comes in. It's sort of building and building and building and building, and then it goes into Tie Your Mother Down. Well, on the end of Teo Toriate, that same guitar line that builds and builds and builds, almost like you're going up a staircase to somewhere, or an escalator up to somewhere. And it just sort of builds and builds and builds and builds. And then it just sort of peters out. So they sort of bookended the album. They did bookend the album with those two guitar pieces on the beginning and on the end of those two tracks to sort of group it together, which I think is amazing. I think it's as popular as it was, I think it was a very underrated album overall. Where was I? Number 5, Sheer Heart Attack. That came out in November of 74. Their third album. Let me just 1 second, grab a sip of coffee here. Was I going to say? Yeah, their third album, Sheer Heart Attack. A little bit of a departure from Queen 2 and Queen 1, because Queen 2 and Queen 1 were basically all out rock albums. There's no way around that. There's no way to deny that. But with Queen 2, listen to me, with Sheer Heart Attack, sorry, they wanted to stretch out a little bit, do something different. And, it starts off with Brighton Rock, which the track starts with, I don't know what sound effect this is or where it came from, but you sound like you're at a fair, and you hear like it's like you're at a carnival, and you hear the music, and then it goes into the guitar intro to Brighton Rock, and the drums come in, and then Freddie comes in with a falsetto that is just unreal. Like, not that he had to, but you almost imagine him standing on the tips of his toes in order to reach the vocal, but he didn't have to because he had such a vocal range. But it's just a beautiful delivery on the vocal. And then it goes into a guitar solo that they use the echo effects, the delay effects to build up the guitar solo, like point and counterpoint on it. This song originally was written for Queen 2, but they didn't think that it fit the rest of the material on Queen 2, which I can understand why. The guitar solo is just amazing on Brian May, and whenever he did it live, it was almost like a showcase for him to do a guitar solo while the band took a rest backstage or did whatever they were going to be doing. And it's a great track. And then it goes into Killer Queen, which was their very first major hit. I think it hit number 2 in Britain, and it was number 12 in the US and North America. So it's a very good, very quick, um, good pop rock track with a great solo, building of guitar layers and point and counterpoint with Brian May. And it was what the band needed in terms of a hit, because it was a third album, and they were dealing with a lot of stress from the Sheffield brothers in terms of the production, the management company. So it was really what they needed. Um, Tenement Funster is a fantastic Roger Taylor track, and he's almost always been like the rebel of the band. And this song is no different. I mean, like, it just very strong guitar lines, and his gravelly vocal style is unmistakable. And Brian May doing the guitar solos and the over interweaving of guitar lines and just harmony, it's just fantastic. Then that segues into Flick of the Wrist by Freddie Mercury, which was the B-side to Killer Queen, and basically talks about their dealings with management, etc. Like, as he refers them, as the lead off line is, "Dislocate your spine if you don't sign," he says. "I'll have you seeing double." It's like, okay, what are we talking about here? It's just a great track. And these songs in the first few albums would go off like different time signatures, different sections, which in this track is no different. And then it goes off into a great guitar solo with the drums underpinning everything. And then it goes back into the main, um, section of the track, and to finish it off. And that track segues into Lily of the Valley, which is just a beautiful ballad that Freddie Mercury wrote. It's only like a minute and 20 seconds, but very beautiful, very poignant. And then it goes into Now I'm Here. Now I'm Here, written by Brian May. At the time of the recording of the album, he was in the hospital dealing with, first of all, on the Queen 2 tour, they had to abandon the tour with Mott the Hoople in the States because Brian May came down with hepatitis, so he had to leave. He subsequently ended up in the hospital with an ulcer. So when he was listening to what they were writing in the studio, he basically said, "I got to get my shit together and start writing some stuff." So he wrote Now I'm Here, and it's basically based on their tour of North America with Mott the Hoople. Hands Off Side 1, great rocker. Was released as a single in the UK, reached number 11. Elektra and Their Ignorance did not release it as a second single. They instead re-released Keep Yourself Alive, backed with Lily of the Valley and God Save the Queen. I don't know why. So Queen singles up to that point were a little bit slanted in the US. Side 2 begins with the operatic, cod operatic opening of In the Lap of the Gods, with Roger Taylor doing that over the top vocal delivery, and Freddie and Brian doing the underpinning vocal. And it all comes together with swirling guitars, and then when Freddie Mercury comes in on the vocal, his vocal is slightly slowed down to give him more of a dramatic feel, and it's just a beautiful song. That segues into Stone Cold Crazy, which is 2 minutes and 20 seconds of bombast and heavy metal riffing and just beautiful guitar work, and just breakneck drumming from Taylor. That was one of the oldest songs that was written by Queen as a collective. Nobody knows who came up with the arrangement. There was a slower arrangement due to it before, years before, even before I think John Deacon joined the band, and he's given credit on it for this version. Dear Friends is just a beautiful piano ballad, 1 minute and 7 seconds that Freddie Mercury sings, and it's just very poignant. Misfire, 1 minute 49 seconds, a beautiful pop track, just great. John Deacon plays all the guitars on it except for the guitar, weaving guitar passage at the end. Goes into the ragtime jazz of Bring Back that Leroy Brown with Freddie Mercury and all the vocals. Django piano, beautiful guitar solo, stand-up bass from John Deacon, beautiful. Then it goes into She Makes Me, Stormtrooper and Stilettos, just a very beautiful, very dreamlike, ethereal track, heavy drums, drum sound, but a very ethereal track, vocal track, sorry, delivered by Brian May. And I love it. I first heard this album in the summer of '83. So at that point, this was all new to me. And when I hear that song or these songs, I'm always taken back to that time. Always. It doesn't matter when, like I hear it, I'm always taken back to that time period. After She Makes Me is In the Lap of the Gods Revisited. There, again, 3/4 time from Freddie Mercury. Beautiful track. Very sweeping piano lines. And it starts off with him singing, "It's so easy, but I can't do it. It's so risky, but I got to chance it. It's so funny, there's nothing to laugh about. My money, that's all you want to talk about." One could venture to guess what the song was about. I don't know. I have an idea, but I'm not going to try and decipher it now. I think it's just a beautiful song, and it has a very catchy chorus where they're all singing together in a group style, and then the song goes and goes and goes and comes to a very end, and it just comes to like a crashing end, almost like how can I put this? Like a car, like not a car crash, but like a thunderclap, kind of a distorted thunderclap. Let's put it that way. Put it that way. I think it's a great album. It's a good way to end the album. It's a shocking way to end the album, but I think the album is like stands the test of time for me. And I go back to that album quite a bit. Number 4 is the debut called Queen. Released July 13th of 73. I believe it was in the UK, and I believe it was released in the States September 73. Fantastic album, very heavy. Starts off with Keep Yourself Alive with that, that swirling guitar intro, and then the hi-hat kicks comes in, and then the drums come in, and the song starts. Just a great way to start the album. Doing all right. One of the only tracks that was written by Brian May and Tim Staffel. It was previously recorded by Smile years before on an album, a Japanese import called Ghost of a Smile that I have downstairs somewhere. It's there's different tempos, different time signatures. It goes from a ballad to like a bit of a jazz section to a hard rock section. Just an overall very, very pleasant track. Great King Rat by Freddie Mercury. It almost has like a galloping drum pattern to it, which is how I describe it. Very hard vocal, very perfect, good delivery. And basically talks about someone who's a son of a bitch, really, who didn't care about anyone but himself, and reap the rewards of whatever he did. So, and it has different sections to it, different time signatures. Fantastic. It leads into final track on side one called "My Fairy King." Another these two tracks were written by Freddie Mercury. Very beautiful track, very sort of Dungeons and Dragons kind of a wizards type of a motif in terms of the lyrics. Some vocals come in, they sound very ethereal. And there's one line at the end of the song where Freddie says, "Mother Mercury, look what you've done to me. I cannot run, I cannot hide." And then the track finishes up. Beautiful, beautiful song. And what they started to do from the very beginning was overlapping of vocal lines. Even if it was just a word, they would deliver in such a way that if it was mixed in properly, it sounded really big in terms of the overall sound of the track. Side two starts off with Liar, very heavy song, written by Freddie Mercury from when he was in a band called Wreckage. The song was called Lover. He changed it to Liar. Very heavy track, builds and builds and builds in the beginning with drums and hand claps, goes into a very heavy section of the first part of the song. And then you hear the organ comes in, and Freddie Mercury's like basically singing to a priest. Lyrics like, "I have sinned, dear Father, Father, I have sinned." Uh, um, Try and help me, Father, won't you let me in? You know, um, it's just a beautiful, hard hitting, hard hitting track. Sorry, I'm a little tired, guys. But it works. It works. It's 6 minutes and 30 seconds. This was a second release from Queen, from the album, but it was knocked down to like 3 minutes and 10 seconds. How the hell can you knock down a song, like edit a song down to 3 minutes and 10 seconds from 6 minutes and 30? I have no idea, but it bombed. Doing All Right was the B-side to this one. The Night Comes Down, which is after Liar. Fantastic song. Brian May composition. This was the only track from the album that was recorded during the Delane Lee sessions. And they decided to keep it because they liked the drum sound on it the best. Very sort of atmospheric lyric lines, and trying to find the good in everyone, but not trusting anybody, which is really difficult to be a situation to be in. After that track comes Modern Times Rock and Roll, which written by Roger Taylor. Blistering, hard rocking, almost heavy metal track. Fantastic guitar solo by Brian May, over the top, just ass kicking. And it's only like 1 minute and 30 seconds, like seriously. Then it goes into Son and Daughter, written by Brian May. That was the B. I think it was the B side to Keep Yourself Alive. Basically a blues number, and very, very heavy, very heavy guitar tracks that were recorded for this song. Just an amazing blues track. In concert, this song would stretch out into a guitar solo for Brian May. And he used elements of Brighton Rock before in the solo before he recorded Brighton Rock. So Brighton Rock has his roots far into Queen history. And then it goes into Jesus, which is Freddie's biblical take on the story of Jesus of Nazareth. And beautiful, just beautiful vocal performance. Goes off into that's again, that's what these songs on the early Queen albums will do. They go off into different time signatures and different sections, and very heavy guitar solos from Brian May. It's just a great song. The ending of that, at the end of the album, you have the teaser, what they call, of Seven Seas of Rye, which is just 1 minute and 15 seconds, and it's a slowed down version to what you would hear on Queen 2. It's an instrumental. It starts off mid-tempo or slow into mid-tempo, and then as the drums kick in, it speeds up. But as it speeds up, it also fades out. So I guess Freddie didn't have it completed in time for the album, so they just wanted to give you a bit of a taster and tease you with it. The original idea was to have Seven Seas of Rye open Queen 2, but we'll get to that in a sec. Things obviously changed. Number 3 is Innuendo. Released February 5th, 1991 in North America, their first album on Hollywood Records, at that point distributed by Warner Music. Their last album to be recorded while Freddie Mercury was still alive. In 1990, they signed a new deal with Hollywood Records. They left Capitol. They signed a new album deal / distribution deal for their back catalog with Hollywood Records. This is a very strong album. It's fantastic. Starts off with the title track, where it was basically that one track, 6 minutes, 30 seconds. Very intricate, very elaborate, very over the top in terms of the drumming, in terms of the guitar work. There's a midsection where you have flamenco guitar, where you have Steve Howe from Yes contributing to it. There's 4 different sections to it. Very big, over the top, bombastic, heavy. It goes into I'm Going Slightly Mad, which, it's Freddie Mercury. He was in the studio one day, came up with the idea for the song, and they all contributed, and he wanted to finish it. Very Noel Coward. If you look at the video, it's in black and white, and he's wearing a huge wig, and you can tell he's very sick. And you can tell from the lyrics that he knows that he's dying, like he doesn't have long left. Next is Headlong, the lead single off of Innuendo. Great song. Hard driving, heavy hitting. This was the first single released in North America. Great guitar solo, great rhythm track, drums, heavy drums. Just a very good, hard rocking, feel good song. I can't I Can't Live Without You comes next. That's another one that Brian May came up with in the studio, and they wanted to record it. Great song. The drums are very soft on it. You can barely hear the drums. It's just the way they were recorded. In 97, they released a compilation called Queen Rocks, and Queen recorded the track with heavier drums for the compilation. Don't Try So Hard, that comes after. I Can't Live Without You, is a very beautiful ballad. I guess you call it semi-ballad, by the band. Freddie doing a falsetto vocal. And again, I do believe it's about somebody just looking back over their life and saying, you know what, you're doing the best you can with what you have, and that's enough. And it's a good sentiment to have. Ride the Wild Wind that follows it. It's just an amazing, hard driving Roger Taylor song. Um, uh, Bass synths or not, it's still very heavy. The drums are just like they just keep you going, keep you pushing forward. Great guitar solo by Brian May, and basically it's saying, you know what, we can get away from here. We can do whatever we want. We don't need to be here right now. If what we're going through, if what you're going through is getting to you, which we've all been through that, get in your car, get on your bike, and get the hell out of here, and just go. Go wherever the world's going to take you. And that's a good way to think sometimes. But that's Santa side one. Side two, All God's People, written by Freddie Mercury and Mike Moran, credited to Queen. This album is gospel galore. This was written during the album sessions for Freddie Mercury's solo album with duet album with Montserrat Caballé, Barcelona, and he gave it to the band, and they were all credited. So they all worked on it, and it's credited to Mike Moran and Queen. So it's a beautiful song. Some people don't like it. I think it's great. It's bombastic. It's gospel. It's heavy. It's over the top with the dramatic harmony vocals and beautiful keyboards. And you know what? It's a fantastic song. These Are the Days of Our Lives. Beautiful, poignant ballad written by Roger Taylor. You gotta love it. I mean, it's just basically somebody who is looking back over their life and questioning if they've done all they could do, and if they've done right by people and done right by themselves. Have they made the right choices? Can they turn back the time clock and correct the mistakes they made? I think it's a great song. And it was written by Roger Taylor, credited to Queen. Delilah, written by Freddie Mercury about his cat Delilah. Just a very playful song. Roger Taylor denounces it now. He says, he says it really wasn't what I wanted to do. I can't get behind it at all. Okay, whatever. But Freddie wanted it on the album as an ode to his cat Delilah. So I mean, what are you gonna do? What's next? Oh yeah, The Hitman. Ooh, hold on. One more sip of coffee. Just one sec. The Hitman is a hard driving track started by Brian May. Heavy guitars, heavy drums, and a fantastic vocal delivered by Freddie Mercury. And just unrelenting in terms of its delivery. Just it doesn't give up, doesn't quit until they say it's time. You have no choice. Just strap yourself in and just enjoy the ride. Bijou, which comes next, is basically a guitar and keyboard interwoven track, a beautiful guitar solo by Brian May. Obviously the guitars are treated with certain effects. I don't give a shit. I love the album. I love this track. It is what it is. And there's a small paragraph for vocals for lyrics by Freddie Mercury. It's beautiful. It's just amazing. The album ends with "The Show Must Go On." Very telling as to what Freddie was going through. It was written by Brian May, but it was, the lyrics obviously reflect what was happening with Freddie. Just very hard driving, very poignant at the same time, hard hitting. Sorry, and anthemic. All these words to describe it, but it's a fantastic way to end off the album, and very sad knowing that what happened after the release of the album. That's Innuendo. It's number 3. Number 2, A Night at the Opera. Released November of 75 on Elektra. What's to say about Night at the Opera? Known for the 2 singles, Bohemian Rhapsody and You're My Best Friend. It is Queen at their opulent best. This was where they were, you see, at this point in the band's career, at this point in any band's career in the 70s, if you were successful, you were given carte blanche to do whatever the hell you wanted in the studio. And for this album, they used 7 studios, sometimes 2 at once, with one band member working on one song in one studio, another band member working on another song in another studio. The album starts off with Death on Two Legs, Freddie Mercury at his acidic, vicious best, with a guitar extravaganza performance by Brian May, fantastic vocals. Variety was the word of the day when it came to these albums, like Sheer Heart Attack, and starting with Sheer Heart Attack, and At the Opera was no different. It goes into Lazing on a Sunday Afternoon, which 1:08, Freddie Mercury just having fun, sort of very 1920s kind of feel. Goes into next, I'm in Love with My Car, Roger Taylor composition. Some people say it's weird. I don't think Roger Taylor thought it was weird when he was getting the royalties, as it was the B-side for Bohemian Rhapsody. Very fantastic, over-the-top track, heavy guitars, piano combination, heavy drums, car effects, revving car effects, just beautiful. Followed by You're My Best Friend, second single, Taylor. Listen to me. John Deacon wrote it as a tribute to his wife, Veronica, with him on electric piano. And he wanted that to be the second single. And that single is still played on FM radio today. So it's a fantastic piece of work. It's just a beautiful pop song. 39 follows You're My Best Friend, which is an acoustic folk track with heavy double bass drum and double bass from John Deacon and Roger Taylor. Roger Taylor delivers in the midsection a very high ethereal vocal. It talks about an astronaut going on a trip out to space. He thinks he's gone for a year, but due to the way that time works, being out in space, he comes back and it's 100 years later. And all of his family and friends are gone, and he's left to live the rest of his life on Earth without his loved ones. And the lyric at the end of the song is, "For my life still ahead, pity me." Right? So it's a fantastic song. That goes into, Sweet Lady, which is just a brutal, heavy, hard-hitting rock waltz song. It was done in 3/4 time by Brian May. Great song, heavy, hard-hitting vocal delivered by Freddie Mercury. Then that goes into Seaside Rendezvous, another Freddie Mercury track. And again, very sort of light, playful, 1920s kind of a feel to it. And Freddie Mercury and Roger Taylor do all the woodwind instruments by themselves during the record on the track. It's just that ends side one, and it's a good way to end side one. It's like almost like it's an intermission to what's going on, to what's going to happen on side two. Flip the record over, starts off with Prophet Song. 8 minutes, 17 seconds of, dare I say, bombastic bliss. Heavy track. Very intricate guitar lines written by Brian May. The track was based on a dream he had about someone who basically showed up to this town saying that, he could lead people to a better understanding of themselves, to a better world. Evangelists, con men, whatever you want to call them, right? The midsection with the a cappella vocal is split up into 3 sections. So you have the left, it starts off on the left channel, continues on the right channel, and then ends in the center channel. So you have left, right, center, and you're sort of enveloped in a vocal delivery by Freddie that is unreal. And then it goes back into the track. The backing track for this song is so heavy. It's unbelievable. And then from there it goes into Love of My Life, written by Freddie Mercury. Beautiful song written for his girlfriend at the time that he was living with, Mary Austin. Features Brian May on a full-size harp that he played. It took hours to tune it and like only 2 minutes to put it on the track. So go figure. Goes into the next song is Good Company, which is Brian May doing kind of like it's a George Formby type jazz track where with his guitar he does all the parts of a jazz band, trumpets, etc., flutes. It's just great. It's just a great track. Although sometimes I'm in the mood to hear it, and sometimes I'm not. So the skip option is good for that, but it's still a good song. Then it goes into Bohemian Rhapsody, and what can be said about Bohemian Rhapsody that hasn't been said by every other person doing these reviews on earth. It's just a great song. There is supposedly an 8-minute version of it, but I don't know. I doubt it. And then it goes into their version of God Save the Queen. And very bombastic, very, very fantastic. Roger Taylor does some timpani drums on the track, so it's great. That's number 2. Number 1 for me is Queen 2. I know people say, oh, well, what about Night at the Opera being number 1? I have a history with Queen 2. It's the album that I go back to, released in April of 1974. It's Queen's most heavy, someone would say progressive album in terms of the arrangements. I just think it's fantastic. It starts off with Procession, instrumental piece, goes into Father to Son, with different sections to it, just heavy guitars. That leads into White Queen, which is basically a poem that Brian May written in 1969, and he put music to it, just very intricate overlaid guitars. Someday, One Day, which is another Brian May song. The first 4 tracks on the album were written by Brian May. Very, very ethereal imagery that's brought up on the song. Then that goes into Loser in the End by Roger Taylor, which is a song about, teenagers growing up and wanting their independence, and, and telling parents to basically calm down because they were young themselves once. So just relax yourself, right? That ends side 1. Side 2 is off Freddie Mercury. Starts off with Ogre Battle, starts off with the backward gong, and it starts off, and then the vocals come in as they're not screaming, but a high end, like just a high energy delivery on a vocal. And then it goes, has some backwards effects. The guitars kick in, very heavy. And then the song begins with a backward gong. The song ends with that same gong going, just play forwards. Then it goes into Fairy Fellow's Master Stroke, which was based on a painting that was hanging in the Tate Gallery. The painting is by Richard Dadd. Very intricate lines, vocal lines, and guitar harmony lines. It goes into another track, Nevermore, which is great. Beautiful, poignant track. And I think it talks about Freddie Mercury saying to his parents or whoever, how could you treat me this way? How could you tell me that everything was going to be okay when it wasn't? So that track is like 1 minute and 15 seconds. And that leads into the March of the Black Queen, which, again, this is all Freddie Mercury on side 2. 6 minutes, 30 seconds of, I call it progressive rock. This is the most progressive rock piece. The track is split up into 11 different sections. So there's sections where you have ascending vocal lines and descending piano lines that cross one another and intermingle, and some sections are done in polymetric and polyrhythm time signatures simultaneously. So it's very complex. Very good. There was a lot of textures on this album. The original title was going to be called Over the Top. So there you go. Take from that what you will, right? And then it goes into all the tracks on side 2, with the exception of the last track, are all sequenced together. And the first 3 tracks on side 1, or 4 tracks on side 1, are all basically sequenced together. It goes into, after Much of the Black Queen, you have Funny How Love Is, which is, again, another Freddie Mercury composition, never performed live, just very playful track, basically kind of like the full spectrum wall of sound, a lot of layered guitars, acoustic and electric, and vocal harmonies. And then it goes into the last track on side 2 of 7 Seas of Rhye, which was their second single, released in the UK, went to number 10 in the charts due to their performance on Top of the Pops that they were asked to do at the last minute. Just a very, very bouncy, very quick rock track that Freddie Mercury wrote. Very intricate guitar lines, good harmony guitar passages, heavy drums, heavy harmony vocals, lush, textured harmony vocals from the group, from Freddie Mercury, Roger Taylor, and Brian May. And that ends the album of Queen 2. Now, Again, some people say, why didn't you pick Night at the Opera as your favorite? Well, again, I have, how can I put this? Queen 2 is the album I usually go back to listen to. Even now in the YouTube age, I always call that one up on YouTube to listen to it. If I want to hear dramatic, over the top vocals, that's what I go for. So, yeah, that's my list. Sorry, it's a longer video, guys. I'm going to try maybe edit it down to make it shorter. But yeah, leave your comments in below and let me know what your list is. It could be the same, maybe not. Who knows? But yeah, please, when you watch the video, hit like and subscribe. And again, leave your comments below. And I will see you soon, hopefully with another video. And for now, take care. Have a good night. Bye-bye.